This is going to be a long-term video review on my Lexus GS300. I've had it for a little over a year and I put over 21,000 miles. And the point of this video is if you're looking to buy a second generation GS300, I'll be covering what it's like to live with it. And of course, the running costs associated with it, things like depreciation, and some of the key maintenance items that you're gonna have to address if you wanna keep it on the road for a long time. I'm also going to be covering how my opinion about this car has changed over my first year with this vehicle. Some of the things to note is that the second generation GS has mainly two models, the 8-cylinder and the 6-cylinder. This is a 6-cylinder engine, that's why it's called the GS300. As far as the trims in the United States, the most important distinction between the levels is whether yours came with the navigation or non-navigation and the availability of xenon lights. But I'll be honest with you, I have yet to see a second generation GS300 with xenon lights in person. In other videos, I've covered the specs of my particular GS300 and I just don't feel like I need to do that in this video. So if you want to check out my impressions and overall review of this vehicle, feel free to check the list I've made on this car. Most importantly, the second generation GS had a midlife refresh somewhere around the year 2000 for the year 2001 model. There was some slight revised grille, some things like the taillights were a little bit different, the headlights had a little bit of a tint, and the availability of xenon light that became standard with the V8 and an option for the 6-cylinder. More interior wood trim was added and the steering wheel shift buttons were added to the GS300. The V8 engine also received a little bit more displacement, so it went from a GS400 to a GS430 to address the new 4.3 engine. If you care for my honest opinion, I much rather like my non-navigation model and no HIDs. After 2 decades, I pay more attention to the overall preservation of the models that I see on the road driving today. Some things like navigation systems from those years on these vehicles just didn't age well, or even things like gold-plated emblems that were like a dealership installed option seem kind of tacky now. Those of you that have followed my channel since I got this car should remember that when I bought it, it was completely stock. And I mean, it had the stock wheels and tires and suspension. And I remember that I found the wheels and tires not big enough for the car, so it looked kind of silly. So I looked for this setup that lowered it a little bit and gave it a more aggressive look. I did not have a problem with the handling of the vehicle. It was a little soft, but I did it more for aesthetics. Another thing that I want to mention is that throughout this year, I've been using 91 octane on this car. It's probably a waste of money. I want to hear from you. What do you guys do? I mean, probably do fine with 87. When you don't have a car payment, I feel that I can splurge a little bit on expensive California gas prices. From the interior side of things, this has been a very usable midsize sedan. 21,000 miles in a year is no small stroll for any vehicle, let alone for a 2 decades old car. Is it the largest interior space? No, I'm under 6 feet and sometimes I long for more legroom when I'm driving on those long trips. My TSX, that was a compact sedan, had more legroom for the front passengers than this GS, so this car has a very subtle way of reminding me that it's a real wheel-based platform in its interior proportions. Elbow room is great and the sitting position is also very good. The back seat is fairly comfortable for the few times that we have company, but the rear seats do not offer a ton of space compared to a modern midsize sedan. After selling our modern SUV, this GS became the main vehicle in our household for the last 5 months, and it's not the most practical as the rear seats do not fold down, and sometimes I struggle with cargo in very specific situations. I nearly ripped the back seat carrying the bicycle for about 60 miles, so no, it's not the most practical vehicle out there, especially when a lot of us have experienced the benefits of modern crossovers and SUVs. Little by little, I have become used to the lack of a modern entertainment system. My iPhone 12 Pro complements the stereo system with grace, and that is all I need for now. But I wouldn't judge you if you want to modernize the center stack with aftermarket options. Honestly, I feel that these cars are worth the investment if that is your cup of tea. For the last 5 months, all of my vehicles are old and I have adjusted to the lack of features like adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist. I have resorted back to looking over my shoulder when I'm driving and merging lanes for the lack of a blind spot monitor and things like a rear view camera. Parallel parking is a chore for these same reasons, and I tend to park too far from the curb for fear of scratching my S-Sport wheels, as my low profile tires do not offer too much protection. So I would say that if you come from a vehicle from around 2000 2015 and newer, you will find yourself in a very plain and organic vehicle without most modern nannies like cross-traffic alert and pre-collision braking. Whether you think that is a good or bad thing, I'll leave it up to you. Running cost and depreciation. This is going to be a very tricky subject because I have overspent in some areas, but if you want me to keep it fair, I'll first give you the breakdown of the money that I have spent just to keep it running safely and smoothly. The front brakes were $300, balancing and alignment that was $400, and the timing belt key replacement and the transmission service that I did at the same time was $1,100. I also did about 5 oil changes for a total of $600. If my numbers are right and I'm not missing anything, the core expenses amount to about $2,400 in maintenance. I paid $7,500 for this vehicle, therefore I have spent about $10,000 on this car. Now we have to figure out how much my car is worth now to establish residual value. I looked online for similar cars and it's really hard to make comparables because cars this old come in so many different combinations, but I picked $7,000 as what I think my car is worth if I needed to do a fire sale. Sure, I could get more if I'm willing to wait for the right buyer, but a lot less if I decide to just get rid of it. Let's see what I spent on gas. Fuel efficiency is the biggest Achilles tendon of this car. It has given me about 21 miles of combined fuel economy, and it's really hard to come up with this number because the bulk of the miles on this car have been on the highway, on which I get about 25 to 26 miles per gallon. But in the city is really low. At about $4.50 per gallon, I have spent about $4,500 on gas. Let's add it to the $3,000 that I believe my car has lost in value in the first year for a grand total of $7,500. Adding $1,370 in insurance cost and $200 in registration fees brings it to $9,070. I must warn you, this part of the video may be a little subjective because I'll attempt to compare the cost of owning this old car versus a new car, so feel free to skip to the next section altogether. $9,070 to drive 21,000 miles in a year. That's 43 cents per mile when AAA says that the average cost of owning a vehicle in California in 2024 for vehicles driven 20,000 miles per year was 70 cents per month. So driving this 20-year-old car is 38% cheaper than driving the average new car. But I have been super conservative in my comparison. If I were to compare this to the depreciation of a new Lexus in 2024, which will be the IS350 for lack of a new GS, it will be around $13,000 in depreciation just in the first year. So I would say that the biggest savings in driving a car like this will come in the form of a low registration fee, lower insurance premiums, and not having to deal with finance charges. As you can see, the poor fuel economy of my GS makes it not so much of a bargain compared to a new car, at least in the first year of ownership. Sure, the longer I drive it, the more I save, but only if it continues to be as reliable as it has been throughout the first 12 months. Now, if I were to add the most expensive upgrades, which have been the wheels, tires, and suspension, that's another $3,500 that I'm not expecting to see back in any shape or form. And that's why I decided to leave that money out of the equation. But make no mistake, I spent a lot of money on this car, north of $12,000 to be precise.
Stupid's not illegal.
Feel free to visit my 6-month update on this car for my detailed impressions on the tires and suspension upgrades, which weren't cheap, but worth every penny in my opinion. What has it been like to drive this car for a year? A true joy, period. I wouldn't change a thing. It took me a while to do the timing belt kit, which I should have done at the beginning, but I'm glad that everything worked out, and now I have a car that should give me thousands of happy miles in the upcoming months, perhaps years. I do not keep vehicles long, but as I keep running to these older gems, it's harder for me to justify the cost of a new vehicle. These older cars look good, are interesting to own, and have the character the newer vehicles have lost altogether, at least in my opinion. Life's too short to drive appliances, and with the average price of a new car at around $49,000, I cannot say that there's any new cars around that sum of money that I generally aspire to own. Some of you have asked me in my other videos what is next for me car-wise, and I do not know, but I know that my next car purchase is not going to be a new car. It's probably going to be at least 5 years old or a lot older, but it's not going to be anytime soon, especially because of how much I enjoy driving this 2003 Lexus GS300. That is all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button, and if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing. My name is Juan Carlos, and I'll see you next time.